New Orleans. The year is 1850, one of the richest cities in America, a port where fortunes are made overnight. Ships arrive from the Caribbean, from Europe, from every corner of the Atlantic world. Cotton, sugar, tobacco. Millions of dollars pass through the docks every year, but beneath the wealth, New Orleans has another reputation, a dangerous one. Visitors describe the city as beautiful but deadly, a place where crime hides in the narrow streets, where the summer heat suffocates the air, where disease can spread faster than ships can leave the harbor, and where, in certain seasons, people begin to disappear. Because in New Orleans, during the summer of the 1800s, one invisible enemy returns again and again, yellow fever, and when it arrives, the entire city begins to panic. But before the fear spreads, before the hospitals fill, before the bells of the cemeteries ring, New Orleans is alive, loud, crowded, and standing at the center of the most powerful river in North America. To understand New Orleans, you must first understand the Mississippi River. This river is the main artery of the United States in the 1800s. Goods from the American interior travel thousands of miles downriver. Cotton from Mississippi plantations. Sugar from Louisiana fields. Timber from the northern forests. Everything eventually flows toward one place, New Orleans. By 1850, the port has become one of the busiest in the world. Hundreds of ships crowd the docks. Massive steamboats churn the muddy water. Cargo is unloaded day and night. Workers shout across the docks. Crates slam onto wooden piers. The air smells of river water, spices, tobacco, and sweat. Money moves constantly here, but so does something else. People. Thousands of them, sailors, immigrants, merchants, laborers, and criminals looking for opportunity in a city where crowds make it easy to disappear. Summer in New Orleans is relentless. The heat presses down on the city like a heavy blanket. Humidity fills the air. Sweat forms instantly on the skin. The streets are loud from morning until deep into the night. Markets overflow with activity. Fishmongers shout prices. Fruit sellers stack oranges and bananas from Caribbean ships. Spices from distant ports fill the air with unfamiliar smells. But the crowds also hide darker corners of the city. Taverns packed with sailors. Gambling halls lit by candlelight. Street fights that break out without warning. Knife duels that sometimes end in blood on the cobblestones. In New Orleans, danger is not unusual. It is part of the atmosphere. And yet the most dangerous threat in the city is not a criminal. It is something no one can see. In 1850, New Orleans is also the center of another brutal industry, the slave trade. Large markets operate within the city. Enslaved people are bought and sold like commodities. Families are separated. Auction platforms stand in crowded courtyards. Buyers inspect men, women, and children before bidding begins. For many visitors, these markets are shocking. But for the merchants who profit from them, the trade is simply business. The wealth flowing through New Orleans is deeply tied to plantation agriculture, cotton, sugar, rice, and the enslaved labor that makes those industries possible. The port grows rich from this system, but the human cost is enormous, and the city's rapid growth brings another problem with it: overcrowding. To understand why disease spread so easily in New Orleans during the 1800s, you have to look at the land itself. The city is built in one of the most difficult environments imaginable. Much of New Orleans sits on low, marshy ground, surrounded by wetlands and the slow-moving waters of the Mississippi River. Long before the city existed, this region was a maze of swamps, bayous, and muddy floodplains. As the city grew, builders drained parts of the land and raised streets with layers of dirt and debris. But beneath the surface, the ground remained unstable and damp. During heavy rains, water collects in the streets. Canals overflow. Puddles remain for days in the humid heat. In the summer months, the air becomes thick and still. Warm water sits in gutters, ditches, and open drains, perfect conditions for insects and disease. Mosquitoes swarm in enormous numbers, especially near the river and the wetlands surrounding the city. At the time, people do not yet understand the connection between mosquitoes and deadly illnesses. Doctors and residents believe that disease spreads through bad air, which they call miasma. They blame foul smells rising from garbage piles, stagnant water, and decaying waste. And unfortunately, New Orleans produces plenty of both. Livestock wander through some streets. Food waste from markets piles up near the docks. Animal remains and spoiled goods sometimes sit in the heat for days before being removed. Combined with the swampy landscape and intense humidity, the city becomes a place where sickness can appear quickly and spread without warning. Most residents simply accept this danger as part of life in the port city. But every few years, when the summer heat reaches its peak, these conditions create the perfect environment for something far worse than ordinary illness, a disease that returns again and again: yellow fever. At first, the illness appears quietly, so quietly that most people in New Orleans barely notice it. Near the busy docks along the Mississippi River, a sailor falls sick. At first, it seems like nothing unusual. Ports like New Orleans are filled with travelers arriving from distant places, and illness among sailors is common. Long journeys, spoiled food, exhaustion, these things often leave men weak and feverish. But this time, something feels different. Within days, a dock worker begins showing the same symptoms. Then a warehouse clerk. Then a woman living in a crowded boarding house near the waterfront. The pattern begins near the port, the busiest, most crowded part of the city. At first, the symptoms seem mild: a headache, a sudden fever, pain behind the eyes, extreme fatigue that makes even simple movement difficult. Doctors visit patients and offer basic treatments: rest, tonics, bloodletting, whatever remedies they believe might help. But then the illness begins to change. The fever grows stronger, the weakness deepens, and slowly the most frightening symptom appears. The skin begins to take on a strange yellow color. Eyes turn pale and yellowish. Faces lose their natural color. That is when experienced residents of New Orleans begin to whisper a name that has haunted the city for decades: yellow fever. For newcomers, the words mean little. But for those who have lived through previous outbreaks, the meaning is terrifying. Because once yellow fever begins spreading in the hot summer air of New Orleans, it rarely stops quickly. And by the time the city realizes what is happening, the disease has often already moved far beyond the docks. As more people fall ill, fear spreads through the streets. Families close their doors. Shops begin shutting down. Wealthy residents leave the city if they can. Carriages fill the roads heading north. But the poor have nowhere to go. Hospitals begin filling with patients. Doctors struggle to treat the disease. Many do not yet understand its true cause. Some blame bad air. Others blame contaminated water. Meanwhile, the illness spreads through crowded neighborhoods. Funeral processions become a daily sight. Church bells ring again and again. The once noisy port begins to feel different, quieter, tense, as if the city itself is holding its breath. By the middle of summer, the atmosphere in New Orleans begins to change. At first, the city tried to continue as normal. Ships still arrived along the Mississippi River. Markets opened in the mornings. Dock workers continued unloading cargo under the burning sun. But the number of sick people keeps growing. Every day brings new rumors. Another family infected, another house marked by illness, another funeral moving slowly through the streets. Soon, the fear becomes impossible to ignore. Yellow fever spreads quickly through the crowded neighborhoods near the docks, where sailors, laborers, and immigrants live in tightly packed housing. In these areas, the heat, humidity, and poor sanitation create the perfect environment for disease to move from one person to another. Hospitals begin filling faster than doctors can treat patients. Some physicians attempt desperate remedies, bloodletting, herbal tonics, or cold baths, but few treatments seem to help. Meanwhile, the wealthier residents of the city begin to flee. Carriages pack the roads, leaving New Orleans. Families who can afford to escape head north toward safer towns, hoping distance will protect them. But tens of thousands of people have no way to leave. Dock workers, laborers, immigrants. The poor remain trapped inside the city as the epidemic spreads around them. Cemeteries begin filling quickly. The famous above-ground tombs of New Orleans expand as funerals become a daily occurrence. Church bells ring again and again through the hot summer air. Markets grow quieter. Streets that were once filled with music and shouting now feel tense and uncertain. Every cough draws worried glances. Every fever becomes a reason for panic. For many residents, the city begins to feel like a waiting room for something terrifying, because no one knows who will fall sick next. And in the summer heat of New Orleans, fear spreads almost as fast as the disease itself. As the long, brutal summer slowly comes to an end, something begins to change in New Orleans. The intense heat that once hung over the city day and night finally starts to weaken. Cooler winds move in from the north, and with the changing weather, the spread of yellow fever begins to slow. For weeks, the city had lived in fear. Funeral processions moved through the streets almost daily. Church bells rang again and again. Hospitals overflowed with patients, and entire neighborhoods seemed to fall silent as families stayed inside, hoping the sickness would pass them by. But now, gradually, the worst of the outbreak begins to fade. Doctors notice fewer new cases. The docks, once nearly empty during the height of the panic, slowly begin to fill again with ships arriving from distant ports. Workers return to the waterfront. Markets reopen. Street vendors once again shout prices over the noise of crowded streets. Life cautiously returns. Yet the city is not the same. Thousands of people have died during the epidemic. Families have lost parents, children, and neighbors. Entire blocks still carry the memory of the summer when fear ruled the streets. And despite the return of trade and activity, everyone in New Orleans understands one unsettling truth. Yellow fever may be gone for now, but in a port city connected to the entire world, it could always return again. What you've just seen is a reconstruction of New Orleans around the year 1850, during a time when the city stood at the center of American trade and faced some of its deadliest epidemics. The streets, markets, docks, and atmosphere shown in this video were recreated using AI reconstruction technology, allowing us to visualize historical environments with extraordinary detail. Artificial intelligence now helps historians and creators bring forgotten moments of the past back to life, to see cities before they changed, to experience the atmosphere of places that no longer exist in the same way, and to understand how people once lived in worlds very different from our own. If you want to explore more hidden chapters of history, subscribe for the next journey into the past.